Close your eyes and let your mind drift back in time, back through the mists of history, to a world bathed in the warm, golden light of the Mediterranean sun. This is the world of ancient Greece, a land of rugged mountains, sparkling seas, and whispering olive groves. It's here, in this cradle of civilization, that a tapestry of stories was woven. Tales so powerful they have echoed through the ages, shaping art, literature, and the very way we think about the world. These are the stories of Greek mythology. Imagine standing on a windswept cliff, the scent of salt and wild thyme in the air. Below you, the Aegean Sea stretches out like a wrinkled, sapphire blanket. It was in landscapes like this that ancient storytellers first spoke of gods and goddesses, of powerful beings who were as flawed and passionate as the mortals who worshipped them. They were not distant, perfect deities, but a family, full of love, jealousy, and ambition. Their dramas playing out on the grand stage of Mount Olympus. At the head of this Celestia family was Zeus, the mighty king of the gods, who commanded the skies and wielded the thunderbolt. His domain was the heavens, a vast, ever-changing canvas of cloud and light. His brothers, Poseidon and Hades, ruled over their own realms. Poseidon, the earth shaker, held dominion over the restless seas, his moods dictating the calm or fury of the waves. And Hades, the solemn and often misunderstood ruler of the underworld, presided over the quiet, shadowy kingdom of the departed. These powerful brothers were not alone. Olympus was a bustling court, home to a dazzling array of divinities. There was Hera, the proud and majestic queen, protector of marriage, her gaze as watchful as the peacocks that adorned her gardens. There was Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, born fully formed from the mind of Zeus, her symbol the wise, old owl that sees in the dark, and Aphrodite, the embodiment of love and beauty, who was said to have risen from the sea foam, her presence bringing with it the scent of roses and the promise of romance. Apollo, the radiant god of music, poetry, and the sun, drove his golden chariot across the sky each day, bringing light and inspiration to the world below. His twin sister, Artemis, was the wild and free goddess of the hunt in the moon, roaming the forests with her silver bow, a guardian of the wilderness and its creatures. Each god and goddess had their own story, their own symbols, and their own sphere of influence, their lives intertwining in a grand, cosmic dance. But the myths were not just about the gods. They were also about humanity, about our courage, our flaws, and our relentless quest for meaning. They told of heroes, mortals of extraordinary strength and spirit, who walked the earth, their destinies often entangled with the whims of the gods. There was Heracles, whose 12 impossible labors tested the very limits of human endurance, and Perseus, who faced the monstrous Medusa with nothing but a polished shield and a sharp wit. There was Odysseus, the clever king whose long journey home from the Trojan War became an epic of cunning and perseverance. These heroes navigated a world filled with wonder and peril. They sailed uncharted seas, explored labyrinthine mazes, and confronted fantastical beasts, the ferocious Minotaur, the enchanting but deadly sirens, the multi-headed Hydra. Their tales are not just adventures. They are allegories, exploring timeless themes of bravery, loss, temptation, and the search for one's place in the universe. They remind us that even in a world governed by powerful gods, human choices matter, and so the legacy of these stories endures. They are written in the stars and the constellations that still bear the names of ancient heroes and mythical creatures. They are carved into the marble of ruined temples that still stand against the blue Greek sky. They are the foundation of countless plays, poems, and works of art, a wellspring of inspiration that has never run dry. As we journey together into this captivating world, allow these ancient tales to be your guide. Let the gentle cadence of these stories soothe your mind and carry you away. There's no need to strive or analyze. Simply relax, breathe, and listen. Join us as we explore the rich tapestry of Greek mythology, one story at a time. Let the outside world fade away as we begin our journey at the very dawn of creation, in a time before the gods, before the world as we know it even existed. It all began not with light, but with emptiness. A vast, silent, formless void. The ancient Greeks called it chaos. It was not confusion or disorder as we might think of it today, but a gaping, primordial abyss. It was the beginning of everything, the raw, untamed potential from which all of existence would eventually emerge. From this swirling, indefinite state, the first primordial deities began to take shape, not as beings of flesh and blood, but as fundamental forces of nature itself. First among them was Gaia, the earth. Imagine her not as a person, but as the very ground beneath your feet, the solid, nurturing foundation of the world. She was the broad-breasted mother, the source of all life. From her depths rose the mountains, and upon her surface, the plains and valleys were formed. After Gaia came Tartarus, a deep, dark pit in the recesses of the earth, a place of shadow and confinement. And then there was Eros, love, the principle of attraction and desire that would drive creation forward. From chaos also emerged Erebus, the embodiment of darkness, and his sister Nyx, the personification of the night. They were the shadows that filled the void, the quiet and mysterious counterparts to the day that was yet to come. Alone, Gaia brought forth Uranus. The starry sky, it was a vast glittering dome that arched over her, covering her completely. He was the heavens, the rain, the air, and as the sky met the earth, a cosmic union was formed, a sacred marriage that would set the stage for the first generation of gods, and the beginning of a story that would shape the world. The story of their children, the Titans, is where our journey truly begins, in that ancient, formative time. From this primordial emptiness, this chaos, the first entities stir into being. They do not emerge through birth or creation as we understand it, but rather, they simply are. They condense out of the nothingness fundamental principles given form. The first is Gaia, the earth. She is the foundation, the broad-chested one, the everlasting and secure sea for all things. Imagine her not as a sphere of rock and soil, but as a vast, sprawling consciousness, a solid, nurturing presence in the void. She is the ground beneath our feet, the mountains that scrape the sky, and the dark, fertile soil from which life will one day spring. She is potential, stability, and substance. Almost simultaneously, another being arises from the chaos, Tartarus, ace to pit, the deep abyss. If Gaia is the surface, Tartarus is the unfathomable depth beneath. He is a place of gloom and shadow, located as far below the earth as the heavens are above it. He is not evil, not yet. In this beginning, he is simply a necessary counterbalance to the solid ground of Gaia, a concept of depth and confinement, a dark and distant echo in the nascent cosmos. And then, Eros, not the mischievous, winged boy with a bow and arrow, but the primeval Eros, the principle of love and procreation. He is the force of attraction, the irresistible impulse that will drive the universe to create, to multiply, to become more than it is. He is the most beautiful among the immortal gods, the one who loosens the limbs and overcomes the minds of all gods and all men. Without Eros, the universe would remain static, a collection of solitary beings. With him, the story can truly begin. From chaos also come two others, born of the void itself. Erebus, the embodiment of darkness, and Nyx, his sister, the personification of night. Nyx is a figure of immense power and mystery, a beautiful and shadowy goddess veiled in the mists of darkness. Even in later myths, the greatest of the gods will hold her in awe, for she is ancient and fundamental. She is the quiet and the cool of the evening, the blanket of stars, the time for rest and for dreams. Nyx, alone, without a partner, gives birth to her own children. From the very essence of night come ether, the bright, glowing upper air that the gods breathe, and Hera, the day. Thus, from darkness, light is born. Night and day are forever locked in a cosmic dance, chasing each other across the world. When Hera departs, Nyx arrives, and as Nyx retreats, Hera returns, each taking their turn to traverse the great expanse of Gaia. Meanwhile, Gaia, the broad-chested earth, also brings forth children of her own, without the aid of Eros' influence. First, she creates a being equal to herself, one who can cover her completely. Theseus Uranus, the starry heaven. He arches over her, a vast dome of shimmering blue, studded with celestial bodies. He is her perfect counterpart. The sky that embraces the earth. With his arrival, the world begins to take on a recognizable shape. A solid ground below, and a vast sky above. Gaia also births the mountains, the long ridges and high peaks that form her dramatic features, providing homes for the nymphs of the hills. And she brings forth Pontus, the barren, fruitless sea. Not the later, more personified ocean gods, but the sea itself, the salt swell, the vast and untamed waters that lap at her shores. Now, the stage is set. The fundamental architecture of the cosmos is in place. Earth below, sky above, the deep pit beneath, and the forces of love, night and day, to animate it all. The world is still empty of the dramatic personalities and epic struggles that will come to define it. It is a quiet, vast, and waiting stage. It is at this point that Eros, the principle of desire, finally begins to stir the new gods. Gaia, the earth, lies beneath the expansive gaze of her son, Uranus, the sky. He covers her completely, and from their union, the first divine race is destined to be born. The sky and the earth, the two great halves of the world, come together in the first act of cosmic creation. This union will not be a simple or peaceful one. It is a joining of immense and primal forces, and the children they produce will be equally immense, powerful, and ultimately troublesome. They will be the first dynasty, the elder gods, known as the Titans. Their story is one of power, ambition, and the first great betrayal that will forever scar the heart of the new universe. From this monumental joining, the age of myth truly begins to unfold, bringing with it a generation of giants who will shape the world and vie for its dominion. From the vast star-strewn expanse of chaos, to primordial beings emerged, defining the very structure of our world. There was Uranus, the sky, a great dome of shimmering light and endless blue, arching over everything. And below him, Gaia, the earth, broad-chested and nurturing, the firm foundation of all life. They were the first couple, the primal parents, their union, a constant, unbroken, embrace. Uranus would rain down upon Gaia, and from this union, life began to stir. Their first children were unlike anything seen before or since. They were the 12 Titans, 6 sons and 6 daughters, powerful and majestic. Oceanus, the great world-encircling river. Cous, the intellect. Creus and Hyperion, the celestial pillars. Iapetus, the piercer. And the youngest, most ambitious, Kronos, of the cunning mind. Their sisters were equally formidable. Dea, of sight and shimmering light. Rhea, the motherly flow, Mnemosyne, of memory. Phoebe, the bright and prophetic. And Tethys, the mother of rivers. They were the first generation of gods, beings of immense power, embodying the fundamental forces of nature. But the children of Uranus and Gaia did not stop there. Next came beings of a rougher, more elemental make, the 3 Cyclopes, Brontis, the thunderer, Sterops, the lightener, and Arges, the bright. Each had a single, blazing eye in the middle of his forehead. They were master craftsmen, artisans of incredible skill, their hands capable of forging the very thunderbolts of the heavens. Their strength was immense, their nature untamed. And then, the most terrifying of all, the Hecatonchires, or the 100-handers. Codus, Ryrios, and Gyges. Each was a monstrous creature of overwhelming might, with 50 heads sprouting from their shoulders and 100 powerful arms. Their appearance was shocking, their strength immeasurable, a chaotic force of pure, raw power. Uranus looked upon these later children, the Cyclopes and the 100, and was filled not with fatherly pride, but with dread and revulsion. He saw their monstrous forms and untamable strength as a threat to his own dominion over the cosmos. He could not bear the sight of them. So, in an act of terrible cruelty, he took his monstrous sons and thrust them back into the secret places of Gaia, deep within her womb, the dark abyss of Tartarus. He imprisoned them in the earth, refusing to let them see the light of day. Gaia groaned under the immense strain. Her own children were trapped within her, causing her constant, agonizing pain. Her love for her offspring warred with the cruelty of her husband. As the pressure built, her anguish turned to anger, a slow-burning rage against Uranus. She could no longer endure the suffering, and a plan for vengeance began to form in her heart. She went to her other children, the proud Titans, and pleaded with them. She spoke of their father's tyranny, of the injustice done to their brothers. She revealed her plan for his downfall and sought an ally among them. "My children," she implored, "your father has shamed us. Will you help me punish his wickedness, or will you live forever under his oppressive rule?" But the Titans were silent. Seized by fear, they revered their father, the all-powerful ruler of the sky. None dared to speak. None dared to raise a hand against him. All except one. The youngest, Kronos, the one with the crooked counseling mind, felt no fear, only ambition, and a shared resentment for his father. He stepped forward. "Mother," he said, "I will do this deed. I care nothing for our evil-named father." For he was the first to devise these shameful acts. Gaia's heart filled with a fierce joy. She gave Kronos her weapon, a great and terrible sickle she had fashioned from the hardest flint, its jagged edge sharp enough to sever the sky from the earth. She hid him in a place of ambush and instructed him on what he must do. That evening, as Uranus descended once more to embrace Gaia, bringing the night with him, Kronos lay in wait. As the Skyfather lay upon the earth, unsuspecting, Kronos reached out with his left hand, seized his father, and with his right hand, he swung the great flint sickle. The act was swift, brutal, and decisive. He severed his father's connection to the earth, ending his reign in a single, violent moment. The age of Uranus was over. From the wound, drops of blood fell upon the earth, and from them sprang forth more strange beings. The Erinyes, or Furies, spirits of vengeance, who would forever pursue those guilty of patricide and other terrible crimes. The Gigantes, giant warriors clad in gleaming armor, and the Melian nymphs, spirits of the ash trees from which spears were made. The severed pots themselves, cast into the sea, churned the water into a white foam, and from that foam, another goddess would later be born. Kronos, now holding the sickle, the symbol of his new authority, cast it into the sea. He had done the unthinkable. He freed his Titan brothers and sisters, and they, in turn, hailed him as their new king. The age of the Titans had begun. Kronos, ruler of the universe, sat upon the throne of the heavens. He was powerful, cunning, and triumphant, but the 100-handers and the Cyclopes remained imprisoned in the depths of Tartarus. Kronos, fearing their immense power, just as his father had, chose to keep them locked away. He had overthrown one tyrant only to become another, his rule founded on an act of betrayal and violence. And so, a shadow lingered over his golden age. A prophecy was whispered, born from the dying curse of his own father, Uranus, and the knowing heart of his mother, Gaia. They foretold that Kronos, too, would be undone by his own child. Just as he had overthrown his father, so one of his own sons would rise up to depose him. This prophecy would haunt Kronos, turning his reign into a paranoid watch. He knew his fate was tied to the children he was yet to have, and he would do anything to prevent the cycle from repeating. His wife, the gentle Titaness Rhea, would soon bear their first child, and the gears of fate were already turning toward the birth of a new god, one destined to challenge the king of the Titans himself. Rhea, heavy with sorrow and a final, desperate hope, fled to the rugged isle of Crete, far from the watchful, paranoid eyes of Kronos. In a deep, dark cave among Ida, she gave birth to her sixth child. She named him Zeus. The earth itself seemed to hold its breath. To deceive her husband, Rhea wrapped a large stone in swaddling clothes and presented it to Kronos. Blinded by his fear, he swallowed the stone whole, believing he had once again thwarted the prophecy that foretold his downfall by one of his own children, hidden away in that Cretan cave. The infant Zeus was nurtured in secret. He was cared for by nymphs, Adrastea and Ida, who fed him honey and milk from the sacred goat Amath. Around his cradle, the Curetes, warrior-like spirits, would clash their spears against their shields, their rhythmic, metallic clamor drowning out the baby's cries, ensuring his existence remained a secret from the heavens and the tyrannical king of the Titans. On this secluded island, surrounded by the whispering sea and the rustling olive groves, Zeus grew, his divine strength and intelligence blossoming far from his father's destructive reach. When Zeus came of age, his power was undeniable, guided by Metis, the Titaness of wisdom. He devised a plan to free his siblings. He tricked Cronus into drinking a potion, which caused the Titan King to violently disgorge the children he had swallowed. Out they came, fully grown and whole. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Reunited at last, they stood with their younger brother, ready to challenge their father for control of the cosmos. And so began the Great War, the Titanomachy. For 10 long years, the universe trembled as gods and titans clashed. The battles raged across the face of the earth, shaking mountains and boiling the seas. The older gods, the Titans, led by Cronus, fought from their stronghold on Mount Athena. The younger gods, the Olympians, led by Zeus, established their fortress on the magnificent peak of Mount Olympus. The scales of war tipped back and forth, neither side gaining a decisive advantage. The very fabric of creation seemed on the verge of being torn asunder. Seeking allies, Zeus descended into the dark abyss of Tartarus, the deepest pit of the underworld. There, he freed the Cyclopes, the one-eyed giants, Argazes, Brontes, and Starops, who had been imprisoned by Cronus. In gratitude for their liberation, the master craftsmen forged incredible weapons for the Olympian brothers. For Zeus, they created the Thunderbolt, a weapon of unimaginable power that crackled with the raw energy of the sky. For Poseidon, they crafted a mighty trident, capable of shaking the earth and commanding the waves. And for Hades, they fashioned the Helm of Darkness, a cap that rendered its wearer invisible. Armed with these divine gifts, the tide of the war turned decisively. Poseidon's trident shattered the mountainsides where the Titans took refuge. Hades, cloaked in invisibility, moved unseen among the enemy, stealing their weapons and sowing chaos. And from the heights of Olympus, Zeus hurled his thunderbolts, his fury lighting up the cosmos with blinding flashes and deafening peals of thunder. The power of the Olympians was overwhelming. One by one, the Titans fell. Defeated, Cronus and his allies were cast down into the depths of Tartarus, bound by chains forged by the Cyclopes and guarded by the 100-handed Hecatoncheires, whom Zeus had also freed. The long, brutal war was finally over. The reign of the Titans had ended, and a new era for the cosmos was about to begin. With their victory secured, the three brothers Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades met to divide the spoils of their new dominion. They decided to draw lots to determine who would rule which realm. Zeus, by chance and destiny, drew the longest lot, claiming the vast expanse of the sky and the heavens as his domain, becoming the king of all gods and mortals. Poseidon drew the second lot, granting him sovereignty over the seas and all the waters of the world. Hades drew the shortest lot, and to him went the shadowy, mysterious realm of the underworld, the final resting place of mortal souls. The earth itself, Gaia, was left as common ground for all the gods, a place where their powers and influences would often intersect and sometimes clash. From their majestic home on Mount Olympus, a place far above the peaks of mortal mountains, a new order began to take shape. This divine family, with Zeus at its head, would now govern the universe. Their passions, their rivalries, and their laws would weave the tapestry of fate for all creation, influencing the lives of every creature below. The world settled into a new kind of peace, a peace dictated not by the raw, chaotic power of the Titans, but by the complex and often unpredictable will of the Olympian gods. The age of myth was truly dawning, and the stories of these powerful beings were just beginning to unfold. They would establish a new hierarchy, a new set of rules to govern existence. In the ageless realm atop Mount Olympus, where the air hums with divinity, the pantheon presides. There sits Zeus, the king of gods. His presence, as commanding as the thunderbolt he wields. The eagle, his sacred emblem, soars on the celestial currents, a living symbol of his dominion over the sky and all that transpires below. His authority is absolute, yet it is often tested, not by mortals, but by his own family. Beside him, with a regal and often stern grace, is Hera, queen of the heavens. The peacock, with its thousand-eyed tail, struts in her gardens, a reflection of her watchful and protective nature. As the goddess of marriage and family, her gaze is ever fixed upon the bonds that tie both gods and mortals together, her jealousy as legendary as her loyalty. Her sanctuaries, like the Heraion of Samos, stand as testaments to the sanctity of vows. From the mind of Zeus, fully formed and clad in armor, sprung Athena, the embodiment of wisdom and strategic warfare. Her companion, the little owl, sees clearly in the dark, a metaphor for her ability to find truth in obscurity. The olive tree, her gift to humanity, represents the peace and prosperity that fill a wise counsel. The Parthenon, a grand temple in Athens, still echoes with the intellectual and artistic fervor she inspired. Her rivalry with Poseidon over the patronage of that great city was a contest of gifts, not of arms, a battle of wit, not brute force. Bathing the world in golden light is Apollo, the archer god of music, poetry, and prophecy. His lyre can soothe the most savage heart, and his arrows can bring either plague or healing. Mortals and gods alike travel to his oracle at Delphi, seeking to unravel the threads of fate through the cryptic verses of his priestess. The laurel wreath crowns his champions, a symbol of victory and honor. His festivals are celebrations of art and athletic prowess, a pursuit of human excellence under his divine gaze. His twin sister, Artemis, moves through the wild spaces of the world, a silent huntress under the silver light of the moon. She is the protector of the young, the untamed, and all that is pure. With her bow at the ready and her pack of hounds at her side, she roams the forests, a fierce guardian of nature's sanctity. Her temple at Ephesus was a wonder of the ancient world, a place of refuge where the wild and the civilized met in reverence. Her path rarely crosses those of the other gods, for her kingdom is the whispering woods and the silent glades, far from the politics of Olympus. Flitting between the worlds of gods and mortals is Hermes, the messenger with winged sandals. He is the patron of travelers, merchants, and thieves, master of cunning and commerce. With his caduceus, the herald's staff entwined with two serpents, he guides souls to the underworld and delivers the decrees of Zeus with unmatched speed. He is a trickster, a diplomat, and a vital link in the cosmic order. His wit as quick as his feet. His presence is felt at every crossroads, every marketplace, every exchange of words and goods. Then there is Aphrodite, who rose from the sea foam, the personification of love, beauty, and desire. The dove and the swan are her gentle companions, and the rose and myrtle are sacred to her. Her power is not one of command, but of irresistible influence, capable of kindling passion in the hearts of both gods and mortals, often leading to chaos and conflict. Her laughter can disarm the most formidable warrior, and her favor is sought by all who wish to experience life's most profound pleasures. Her influence is a soft, pervasive force, as undeniable as the tide. In stark contrast stands Ares, the god of war, whose heart beats to the rhythm of battle drums. Clad in bronze, he thrives in the clamor of conflict, his spirit fueled by courage and rage. The spear is his instrument, and the battlefield is his temple. While Athena represents the strategy of war, Ares embodies its brutal, visceral reality. He is often at odds with the other Olympians, who view his relentless love of strife with a mixture of fear and disdain. Yet, his raw power is a necessary, if terrifying, aspect of existence. Working in his forge deep within the heart of volcanoes is Hephaestus, the master craftsman of the gods. Lamed from a fall from Olympus, he channels his pain into creation, forging magnificent armor, intricate jewelry, and wondrous automatons. The hammer and anvil are the tools of his divine art. He is the quiet, industrious force behind the god's splendor, his creations both beautiful and deadly. He is the husband of Aphrodite, a union of supreme beauty and supreme skill, a relationship marked by its own gentle, sorrowful tensions. Walking the fertile earth is Demeter, the goddess of the harvest and the cycles of nature. She carries a sheath of wheat, a symbol of the bounty she provides. When she grieves for her daughter Persephone's time in the underworld, winter blankets the land. When she rejoices at her return, spring bursts forth in celebration. The Eleusinian mysteries, her sacred rites, offered initiates a promise of life beyond death, a hope rooted in the eternal rhythm of planting and reaping. Her joy and sorrow directly shaped the mortal world, her mood dictating feast or famine. And finally, there is Dionysus, the twice-born god of wine, revelry, and ecstatic release. He wanders the earth with his troupe of satyrs and maenads, teaching mortals the art of winemaking and the freedom found in abandoning oneself to divine madness. The grapevine and the leopard are his symbols. His festivals, the Dionysia, were riotous affairs of theater and drink, blurring the lines between the sacred and the profane, the human and the divine. As the youngest of the Olympians, his arrival challenged the established order, introducing a wild, unpredictable energy to the celestial court. These 12 deities, in their complex web of alliances and rivalries, govern the universe from their mountain throne. Their stories are not mere myths, but a reflection of the fundamental forces that shape the world. They are a family, with all the love, jealousy, and conflict that entails. Their divine dramas play out against the backdrop of the mortal world, their gazes often turning downward, toward the ephemeral lives that flicker like fireflies in the twilight. It is here, at the boundary where immortal power touches mortal aspiration, that the most profound stories begin to unfold. The time of the great gods, while never truly over, began to share the stage with a new kind of being. The hero, these were men and women of extraordinary ability, often with a divine parent, whose lives were woven into the very fabric of myth. They walked the earth when it was still wild, a place of monsters and magic, and their stories became the bedrock of what it meant to be courageous, flawed, and profoundly human. One of the earliest was Perseus. His tale begins not with strength, but with vulnerability, cast out to sea in a wooden chest with his mother, Danae. But fate, or perhaps the gods, had other plans. Guided by Hermes and Athena, Perseus was tasked with a seemingly impossible quest to slay the Gorgon Medusa, whose gaze turned men to stone. He was not sent empty-handed. From Tegots, he received a polished shield to use as a mirror, a sword sharp enough to slice through Medusa's hide, winged sandals to fly, and a helmet of invisibility. His journey wasn't a brute force assault, but a puzzle of wits and divine tools, culminating in a victory won through reflection rather than direct confrontation. His journey back, laden with the Gorgon's head, was just as eventful, leading to the rescue of Princess Andromeda from a sea monster. Then there was Heracles, perhaps the most famous of them all, the son of Zeus and a mortal woman, Alcmene. He was a figure of immense strength and equally immense tragedy. Cursed by a jealous Hera, he fell into a madness that led to a terrible crime. To atone, he was bound to serve King Eurystheus and complete 12 labors, each one designed to be insurmountable. These labors took him to the edges of the known world. He wrestled the Nemean lion, whose hide was impenetrable. He cleaned the Augean stables in a single day by diverting 2 rivers. He descended into the underworld itself to capture Cerberus, the 3-headed hound of Hades. Heracles' story is one of a relentless trial against both monstrous foes and his own inner demons. His strength was legendary, but his true victory was his perseverance. In Athens, another hero rose, Theseus. While Heracles was a figure of raw power, Theseus was a symbol of intelligence and civic order. His most famous exploit was his journey to Crete to face the Minotaur, a monstrous creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull, locked away in a vast, complex labyrinth. He volunteered as a tribute, a young man determined to end the sacrifice of Athenian youths with the help of the Cretan princess, Ariadne, who gave him a ball of thread to navigate the maze. Theseus found and defeated the beast. He was the clever hero, the founder king, whose story is tied to the very identity of Athens. His journey, like Perseus's, relied on a crucial piece of aid, a simple talisman that meant the difference between success and being lost forever. But heroism wasn't exclusive to men. Atalanta was a figure of incredible speed and skill, a huntress raised by a she-bear after being abandoned in the wilderness. She was a devotee of Artemis, swift of foot and deadly with a bow. She took part in the great Caledonian boar hunt, a gathering of the era's greatest heroes to slay a monstrous boar sent by an offended goddess. It was Atalanta who first drew the creature's blood, proving her skill among her male peers. Her story is a testament to a different kind of strength, one of independence, agility, and a deep connection to the wild. And then there was the greatest ensemble quest of the age, the voyage of the Argo. Led by Jason, a prince wrongfully denied his throne. A call went out across the land for the bravest heroes to join him on a perilous journey to the distant land of Colchis to retrieve the Golden Fleece. The crew of the Argo, the Argonauts, was a who's who of heroic figures, including Heracles himself for a time, the skilled musician, Orpheus, and the winged sons of the North Wind. Their journey was a series of distinct trials, navigating the clashing rocks, escaping the harpies, and finally, facing the sleepless dragon that guarded the fleece. Jason, not the strongest or bravest of his crew, succeeded through diplomacy, perseverance, and crucial magical aid from the sorceress Medea, who fell in love with him. These stories, though different, share a common thread. The hero is often of noble or divine birth, but faces an early trial or exile. They are called to a quest that seems impossible, a journey into the unknown. Along the way, they encounter monsters that represent the chaotic forces of the world, but they are seldom alone. Divine aid is a constant theme, a gift from a god, a magical talisman, or wise counsel, the shield of Perseus, the thread of Ariadne, the magic of Medea. These are not cheats, but essential parts of the pattern, showing that even the greatest heroes rely on help, on wisdom, and sometimes on love. Their journeys are archetypal: a descent into darkness, a battle against overwhelming odds, and a return forever changed. These were the generations that walked the earth before the world grew older, before the age of heroes gave way to the age of men, and before the whispers of a great and terrible conflict began to gather on the horizon. Across the sea, towards the high walls of a city called Troy, Theseus and Peleus, a mortal king and a goddess, were to be wed. All the gods and goddesses of Olympus were invited to the celebration, a rare union of the mortal and the divine. All, that is, except one. Eros, the goddess of discord, was pointedly left off the guest list, but discord is not so easily contained. She arrived uninvited, a shadow at the feast, and rolled a golden apple across the floor. Inscribed upon it were the words, "For the fairest." Immediately, 3 goddesses laid claim to it: Hera, queen of the gods, wife of Zeus; Athena, goddess of wisdom and warfare; and Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. The argument grew heated, threatening to disrupt the divine harmony. Zeus, wisely refusing to judge between his wife, his daughter, and the goddess of beauty, passed the responsibility to a mortal. He chose a young shepherd prince, Paris of Troy, known for his fairness and judgment. The 3 goddesses appeared before him on the slopes of Mount Ida. Each offered a bribe. Hera promised him power to be the ruler of all Asia and Europe. Athena offered wisdom and victory in every battle he would ever fight. But Aphrodite, with a knowing smile, offered him the most beautiful mortal woman in the world for his wife. Paris, a young man ruled more by his heart than his head, chose Aphrodite. He awarded her the golden apple, and in doing so, he sealed the fate of his city. The most beautiful mortal woman was Helen, wife of Menelaus, the king of Sparta. Bound by an oath sworn years before, all the great chieftains of Greece had pledged to defend her marriage. When Paris sailed to Sparta on a diplomatic visit, he was welcomed as an honored guest, but under the spell of Aphrodite's promise, he betrayed that hospitality. While Menelaus was away, Paris persuaded Helen to leave with him, and together they sailed back across the Aegean Sea to the mighty city of Troy, taking a good portion of the Spartan treasury with them. When Menelaus returned to find his wife and his treasure gone, his fury was immense. he called upon his brother, Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mythology. Together, they invoked the oath from all corners of Greece. The chieftains answered the call. Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca, Diomedes, the valiant warrior, the wise old Nestor, and the greatest warrior of them all, the swift-footed Achilles. 1,000 ships were launched, a vast armada sailing east to bring Helen back, and to lay waste to the city of Troy for its prince's transgression. For 9 long years, the Achaean forces besieged the high walls of Troy. The war ebbed and flowed, a brutal stalemate. The Trojans, led by their noble prince, Hector, brother of Paris, proved to be formidable defenders. They had the advantage of their impenetrable walls, built, it was said, by the gods Poseidon and Apollo themselves. The fighting on the plains before the city was savage. Chariots thundered, bronze armor clashed, and the dust of the battlefield mingled with the blood of heroes on both sides. The tide of the war often turned on the whims and interventions of the gods. Athena and Hera, still smarting from Paris's judgment, sided fiercely with the Greeks. Aphrodite, Apollo, and Ares lent their aid to the Trojans. The conflict on earth was a mirror of the discord in the heavens, but the true turning points were often driven by the passions of mortals. In the 10th year of the war, a bitter feud erupted in the Greek camp. Agamemnon, in his arrogance, insulted Achilles by taking his war prize. The captive woman Brice, enraged by this dishonor, Achilles withdrew from the battle. He sat in his tent by the sea, refusing to fight, and his fearsome Myrmidon warriors with him. Without their greatest champion, the Greek forces faltered. The Trojans, led by the magnificent Hector, surged from their gates, driving the Achaeans back to their ships, threatening to burn the entire fleet. The Greeks were on the verge of utter defeat. Patroclus, Achilles' dearest friend and companion, could not bear to watch the slaughter. He begged Achilles to let him wear his armor and lead the Myrmidons into battle, to give the Greeks a fighting chance. Achilles reluctantly agreed, but with a strict warning. Drive the Trojans from the ships, but do not pursue them to the walls of Troy. But Patroclus, caught in the frenzy and glory of battle, forgot the warning. He fought like a lion, pushing the Trojans back across the plain. He came face to face with Hector. The Trojan prince, aided by Apollo, struck Patroclus down. When news of his friend's death reached Achilles, his grief was a terrible thing to behold. It was a storm of sorrow that turned into a tempest of rage. His mother, Theseus, procured new, divine armor for him, forged by the god Hephaestus himself. Wearing this celestial armor, Achilles returned to the battlefield, a figure of terrifying, incandescent fury. He was no longer fighting for glory or for the Greeks, but for vengeance. He scythed through the Trojan ranks, seeking only one man, Hector. The Trojans fled before him, all except Hector, who stood his ground outside the Sion gate to defend his city's honor. He knew he was fated to die. The two greatest warriors of the age faced each other. The duel was swift and brutal. Achilles, with his superior strength and divine armor, was unstoppable. He killed Hector, and in his unending grief and rage, he dishonored the body, tying it to his chariot and dragging it in the dust around the walls of Troy for all to see. The death of Hector was the true beginning of the end for Troy. The city had lost its greatest defender, its heart. Yet still, they held on. Omens and prophecies had long haunted both camps. It was foretold that Troy could not fall as long as the Palladium, a sacred statue of Athena, remained within its walls, and it was prophesied that the Greeks could not win without the bow of the great hero Heracles, now owned by the archer Philoctetes, nor without the help of Achilles' own son Odysseus and Diomedes, masters of cunning, crept into the city by night and stole the Palladium. Philoctetes and Neoptolemus were brought to the front lines. The cogs of fate were turning, clicking into place, one by one. Even with Achilles back in the fight, his own fate was sealed. Prophecy had stated that he would live a long, inglorious life, or a short, glorious one. By coming to Troy, he had made his choice. As he fought near the city gates, an arrow shot by Perseus, unskilled archer guided by the hand of the god Apollo, struck Achilles in his one vulnerable spot. His heel, the greatest warrior of the Greeks, fell, and a hush descended upon the battlefield. The war had claimed the best of both sides. With Hector and Achilles gone, the conflict seemed to have lost its soul, devolved into a grim, grinding war of attrition. But the cunning mind of Odysseus was already at work, devising a final, desperate stratagem, a trick that would bypass the impenetrable walls and bring the long, bloody war. Odysseus, driven by the winds of fate and the whims of gods, sails toward the edge of the world, to the land of the Cimmerians, perpetually shrouded in mist and cloud. Here, the sun never shines, and an eternal, somber twilight reigns. This is the threshold he must cross, a place where the world of the living touches the realm of the dead. Circe's instructions echo in his mind. To seek the counsel of the blind prophet Tiresias, a shade who, alone among the dead, retains his reason. A special gift from Persephone herself. To call the spirits, he must perform a sacred rite, a ritual as ancient as fear itself. It digs a pit, a cubit square, and pours libations around it for all the dead, first with milk and honey, then with sweet wine, and finally with water. He sprinkles white barley over it, and his prayers begin. He vows to the listless, unsubstantial shades that if he returns to Ithaca, he will sacrifice his best heifer and fill a pyre with treasures. But for Tiresias, he promises a special offering, a sleek black ram, the finest of his flock. It's a transaction, a desperate bargain made at the gates of eternity. With his prayer complete, he takes the sheep, a ram, and a black awe, and holding their heads over the trench, he slits their throats. The dark blood flows into the earth, a potent invitation, a scent that stirs the dormant spirits. From the depths of Erebus, they begin to gather the shades of the dead. They swarm around the pit, a ghostly assembly of brides, unmarried youths, old men who had suffered much, and tender maidens with hearts yet new to sorrow. Warriors, too, slain in battle, their armor still stained with the memory of their final moments, press forward with an eerie, ululating cry. A pale fear seizes Odysseus, but he holds his ground, sword drawn, preventing any shade from touching the blood before Tiresias has had his drink. This underworld is not a place of fire and brimstone, but a dim, joyless kingdom ruled by the silent and formidable Hades, a king whose name mortals fear to speak, often calling him Plauton, the Rich One, for the wealth of souls he governs. Beside him sits the dread Persephone, a queen who divides her time between the sunlit world above and this shadowy domain below. She is both a maiden of flowers and the unpitying mistress of the dead, a duality that speaks to the Greek understanding of life and death as an inseparable cycle. She walks through fields of asphodel, a pale, ghostly flower that carpets the meadows of the underworld, a place where memory fades and identity dissolves into a collective, mournful sigh. The governance of this realm is complex, its laws absolute. 3. Jadisminos, Rhadamanthus, and Iacosit. In judge may, not to determine punishment, but to assign the shades their place in this vast, gray landscape. They were once kings on earth, known for their wisdom and justice, and in death they continue their work, upholding the order of Hades. There is no escape from their verdict. And weaving through this entire cosmic order are the Moirai, the Fates Clotho, who spins the thread of life, Lachesis, who measures it, and Atropos, who inevitably cuts it. Not even Zeus can defy their decree. Their will is the ultimate law, a silent, unseen force that guides every mortal from the cradle to the grave and beyond. Odysseus, standing at the precipice of this other world, is a living man in a land of echoes. He is not here as a conqueror, but as a supplicant. His journey is more than a physical voyage. It is a descent into the collective subconscious of his people, a confrontation with the universal fear of oblivion. The shades he will meet are not just characters in a story. They are archetypes of human experience. The hero, the mother, the traitor, the prophet. Each one carries a piece of the mortal puzzle, a lesson about glory, love, and loss. Dreams, in this worldview, are often seen as messages, whispers from the other side. They can be omens sent by the gods, or sometimes the fleeting visitations of the dead themselves, attempting to communicate across the veil. Prophecy, like that which Odysseus seeks from Tiresias, is the act of interpreting these divine or chthonic messages, a rare gift that grants a glimpse into the tapestry woven by the fates. It is a dangerous knowledge, one that can shape a hero's path or seal his doom. The blood in the trench continues to draw them closer, a swirling cloud of forgotten lives. They are thirsty, not for vengeance, but for a momentary taste of life, a brief return to the warmth of consciousness that the blood provides. It is a grim reminder that to be dead is to be severed from sensation, to exist as a mere shadow of one's former self. Achilles himself will later confess to Odysseus that he would rather be a landless serf in the world of the living than a king over all the perished dead. This is the profound sadness at the heart of the Greek underworld. It is not the suffering that is terrible, but the absence of life itself. As Odysseus waits for the prophet, the air grows heavy with unspoken stories, with the weight of countless lives lived and lost. The rites he performs are not just for a single ghost, but are part of a larger tradition of ancestor veneration, of a deep-seated need to maintain a connection with those who have passed. These rituals, passed down through generations, were a way to appease the restless dead, to ensure they did not trouble the living, and to honor the mystery that lay at the end of every life. Secret cults and mystery religions would later evolve from these fundamental beliefs, offering their initiates a more personal and hopeful vision of the afterlife, promising secret knowledge and a blessed existence after death. These Eleusinian and Orphic mysteries offered a path through the darkness, a promise that Persephone's return to the world of light was a symbol of hope for all mortals. But for now, Odysseus stands at the older, starker gate, peering into a darkness that is absolute, awaiting the wisdom that can only be found in the land of the silent shades. The journey into the spiritual heart of ancient Greece takes us now to its most sacred places, the sanctuaries where the divine was thought to touch the earth. Imagine standing on the slopes of Mount Parnassus at Delphi. The air itself seems to hum with ancient power. Here, the Pythia, the high priestess, would deliver cryptic prophecies from Apollo, messages that shaped the fates of kings and commoners alike. The path leading up to the temple, the sacred way, was lined with treasuries built by city-states, each a testament to their devotion and a display of their wealth, all offered in reverence to the god of light and reason. The whispers of petitioners seeking guidance, the scent of burning laurel leaves, the sheer awe inspired by the surrounding landscape. It was a place where the veil between worlds felt thin. Further north, nestled among the oak trees of Ypres, lay Dodona, the oldest of the Greek oracles. Here, the will of Zeus was not spoken through a priestess in a trance, but was interpreted through the rustling of leaves in a sacred oak tree. Priests, known as the Siloi, would listen to these sounds, to the cooing of doves and the clanging of bronze cauldrons, piecing together the divine message from nature's own voice. It was a more primal, more chthonic form of divination, connecting humanity to the deep, ancient rhythms of the earth itself, a stark contrast to the intellectual clarity sought at Delphi. Ritual was the language of this faith. Sacrifice, a practice often misunderstood today, was a central act of communion. It wasn't merely a transaction, but a shared meal between mortals and the gods. An animal, carefully selected and adorned, was offered. Part of it was burned on the altar, the rising smoke carrying the offering to the heavens, while the rest was cooked and shared among the community. This act reaffirmed the bond between the divine and the human, a solemn and structured event that brought people together under the watchful eyes of their patrons. Beyond individual sacrifices, the calendar was marked by festivals, grand public celebrations that were both religious and civic duties. The Panathenaic Games in Athens, honoring Athena, or the great dramatic festivals dedicated to Dionysus, were moments when the entire city came together. These weren't just parties. They were elaborate performances of collective identity, reaffirming social order and shared values through processions, music, athletic contests, and theatrical performances. The city itself became a stage for devotion, a vibrant expression of a living, breathing relationship with the gods. Yet, beyond these public displays, there were deeper, more personal paths to the divine. In the town of Eleusis, just outside Athens, The Eleusinian mysteries offered initiates a profound, transformative experience. For nearly 2,000 years, people from all over the Greek-speaking world flocked here to participate in secret rites dedicated to Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, and her daughter Persephone. What happened within the Telesterion, the Great Hall of Initiation, was a closely guarded secret. Those who were initiated were forbidden, on pain of death, to speak of what they had seen and felt. But from the fragments that survive, we know it involved a dramatic reenactment of Persephone's descent into the underworld and her eventual return. A powerful allegory for death and rebirth. Initiates spoke of emerging from the darkness with a renewed sense of hope and a loss of the fear of death. Having glimpsed a profound truth about the cycle of life, it was a deeply personal salvation, a promise of a blessed afterlife, distinct from the communal worship of the city's gods. And then there was Dionysus, the god of wine, theater, and ecstatic release. His worship offered a different kind of spiritual experience, one that transcended reason and order. Through dance, music, and the consumption of wine, his followers, the Maenads and Satyrs, sought a state of asterisk ecstasies. Asterisk standing outside oneself. They would leave the confines of the city and retreat to the untamed wilderness of the mountains, seeking a direct, unmediated union with the god. This was not the orderly procession of a city festival, but a wild, liberating, and sometimes dangerous dissolution of the individual ego into a greater, divine force. It was the other side of the Greek soul, a counterbalance to the Apollonian pursuit of logic and clarity, a necessary embrace of the irrational, the chaotic, and the primal life force that animates all things. These varied rites, the solemn pronouncements of Delphi, the earthy whispers of Dodona, the communal feasts of sacrifice, the secret revelations of Eleusis, and the wild ecstasies of Dionysus show us a spiritual landscape far more complex and varied than we often imagine. They reveal a people constantly seeking connection, meaning, and transcendence in a world they saw as alive with divine presence. Each path offered a different way to touch the sacred, to understand one's place in the cosmos. Much of what was written about the most secret of these rites, especially the direct experiences within the mysteries, has been lost to time. The texts that describe the core of these transformative visions are gone, leaving us to piece together their meaning from the shadows they cast on surviving literature and art. We are left to wonder about the full extent of these beliefs, and how they would continue to evolve, to be challenged, and to be absorbed into the new spiritual currents that were slowly beginning to flow across the ancient world. The philosophical inquiries that would question the very nature of these gods were already underway, and new faiths were on the horizon, promising different answers to age-old questions. The threads we've been following don't always lead to a single, neat tapestry. Sometimes they fray, disappear for a while, only to be rewoven by later hands into something new, yet familiar. Take the Orphic tradition, for instance. It whispered of a different beginning, a cosmic egg, and a primordial creator named Phanes. This wasn't the boisterous, all-too-human drama of Olympus we know so well. It was a quieter, more mystical current running beneath the mainstream, a version of the myths that prized purification, the soul's journey, and a cyclical view of life and rebirth. These weren't tales told around a communal fire for entertainment. They were sacred texts, passed down through mystery cults, promising a deeper understanding of existence to the initiated. One can't help but wonder how many of these texts vanished, perhaps deliberately suppressed, their secrets lost to all but the faintest echoes. As Alexander's armies marched east, they didn't just carry spears and shields. They carried stories. In the sprawling, multicultural cities of the Hellenistic age, Alexandria, Antioch, the Greek gods met their foreign counterparts. Zeus found himself reflected in the Egyptian omen, Aphrodite. This wasn't a hostile takeover, but a fascinating process of syncretism, a blending and merging of divine identities. The gods became more universal, their portfolios expanding. Scribes and scholars in the great library of Alexandria, a place that now exists more in our imagination than in reality, collected, catalogued, and compared these tales. They weren't just preserving myths, they were shaping them, creating standardized versions, and, in doing so, deciding which threads would become the dominant pattern for centuries to come. What alternate versions, what local variations, were left on the cutting room floor of that legendary and tragically lost library. Then came Rome. The Romans, practical and brilliant engineers of empire, looked at the Greek pantheon and saw a system they could adopt and adapt. Zeus became Jupiter, Hera became Juno, Ares became Mars. But it was more than a simple name change. The Roman gods, while sharing many stories with their Greek originals, took on a Roman character. Mars was not just the chaotic god of war, but a revered, disciplined father of the Roman people. Jupiter was not merely a philandering king of the gods, but the embodiment of Roman law and order. Optimus Maximus, the best and greatest. The myths were retold, not just in Latin, by poets like Ovid, but recontextualized to serve the narrative of Rome itself, a city destined by the gods to rule the world. The stories became statecraft. But even as the myths were being codified by empires, a counter-movement was brewing in the quiet halls of philosophy. Plato, famously, was suspicious of the poet's tales. His gods were not the flawed, jealous beings of Homeric epic. He and his followers sought a higher truth, and they began to interpret the myths not as literal history, but as allegories, complex, philosophical metaphors. To the Stoics, the story of Kronos devouring his children wasn't a grotesque family drama. It was a symbol of how time consumes all things. The Neoplatonists saw the pantheon as a hierarchy of divine emanations from a single, unknowable source. The gods became concepts, intellectual tools for understanding the cosmos. This intellectualizing of myth saved it from being dismissed as mere superstition, allowing it to survive in a world increasingly dominated by logic and reason. Yet, much of what we think we know about the original myths doesn't come from a single, unbroken source. It comes from fragments, from quotes in later works, from the notes of a traveler like Pausanias, who documented local cults and stories that were already fading in his time. It comes from Roman poets like Ovid, who took the old tales and infused them with his own wit, pathos, and sometimes a healthy dose of irony. He wasn't a pious believer. He was an artist, using the gods as his cast of characters to explore the heights and depths of human emotion. His metamorphoses became one of the most influential sources for the myths in the Western world, but it's Ovid's version, a brilliant, late-stage reinterpretation. We are reading the myths through his eyes, through the lens of Augustan Rome. And so, the pantheon was never static. It was constantly being reshaped, reevaluated, and these figures: the wise mentor, the tragic hero, the trickster, the earth's mother, are so powerful, so fundamental, that they refuse to be confined to a single telling. They are archetypes, templates, for the stories we still tell ourselves. Every time a superhero struggles with their great power and responsibility, we see a flicker of Hera. Every star-crossed romance echoes the pain of Orpheus and Eurydice. The stories didn't end with the fall of Rome or the closing of the ancient temples. They simply went underground, waiting. They endure in our art, our literature, our films, and even in the quiet, unexamined corners of our own minds, proving that a good story, a story that speaks to something true within us, can achieve a kind of immortality the gods themselves would envy. And the whispers of what has been lost, of the alternate tellings, and the forgotten gods only add to the deep, enduring mystery, opening doors not to answers, but to further dreaming.